All right. So real quick before I start the show, a couple things. One, throughout this episode with Mr. Cook, I mentioned a couple names, and just to keep them from possibly getting into any trouble, joking a little bit, I took their names out of the episode. So there's a moment where you kind of hear a little bit of a beep, and then there's a moment where you hear my son's voice. I recorded him, and he was like, "Oh man!" And so I kind of put that audio over those people's names, just because I didn't, I don't know how they feel about it. I haven't talked about them. I haven't talked to them about it, so I didn't want to have their names in the episode if they weren't comfortable with it. So I took those names out. And then the second thing, when this episode drops, which is Monday, June 19th, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. And I have 3 hats. And what I'm planning on doing is, but I'm seeing all the propaganda of the world. I'm seeing all the things that Satan is doing in this time. We as Christians need to push forth the kingdom. If the world is going to push forth this agenda of nonsense, we need to push forth truth. And so I was originally thinking I'll give away 3 hats. And when I give them away, I'm going to enter. Maybe this is going to be something that can generate interest around my podcast or generate more interest around my social media. But as I was praying about it, I was like, you know what? I felt convicted because the Lord said to me, what are you doing this for? Are you doing everything that you're doing to point to me, or are you doing it just to try to get some more eyeballs on you? And I said, you know what, Lord, you're right. I'm doing this for you. So this giveaway is going to be based off of, we're trying to push kingdom. And so to enter, it's going to be very easy. All you have to do is, if you have an Instagram or if you have a Facebook, there's 3 things that you need to do. I'm going to put a post on my Instagram and on my Facebook. You need to tag 3 friends in the post. And then you need to put your favorite Bible verse in your story, whether it be, you can do it on both Instagram or Facebook. Tag me in that same story. So you're going to tag 3 friends in the post, and then in your story, put your favorite Bible verse along with tagging my account, Call to Acts Podcast, and you'll be entered to win. It's completely free. You don't have to pay for shipping or anything like that, but it's going to be over the next 3 weeks. So the week of the 19th, the week of the 26th, and then the week of July the 3rd. I'm going to give away 1 hat at each of those 3 weeks, and we're going to try to flood as much as we can the gospel out there. We're going to try to put out as many Bible verses as we can. You can enter as many times as you want to. The winner is going to be picked on Friday. I'm going to announce it on my social media. The winner is going to be picked at random. You can enter as many times as you want to, but if you're going to enter multiple times, tag different people each time. Don't just tag the same person over and over again. Don't annoy that person. But yeah, I'm excited to get you guys these hats. Shout out to my guy Hector over at Golden Republic. He hooked me up with a couple of hats. I got this one on now. The ones that I'm going to be giving away are a little bit different. They have a leather patch on the front, but they're really, really good material. I would not offer these things up to you guys if it wasn't first class. This guy does amazing work. So these hats are really, really nice. So if that's something that you want to do completely free, you can go ahead and do that. Enter as many times as you want to. But again, it's going to be 1 hat this Friday, 1 hat the next Friday, and then the 1 hat the Friday after that. Giving away 3 hats. Let's spread the gospel in such a simple way. It's just putting a Bible verse in your story. So if that's something that you guys want to do, and also if you do not have social media, because I know that there are people that listen to this that don't have social media, you can email me, Donovan L. Jones. That's DONOVAN L. Jones 1994 at gmail.com. So if you don't have social media, just shoot me that your favorite Bible verse to my email, and you'll be entered for a chance to win as well. So with all that being said, let's jump into my conversation with Mr. Cook. I love this conversation. I was very encouraged by this conversation. Hopefully you guys will be as well. God bless you guys.
Welcome to the Call to Acts Podcast.
Hopefully I don't get into some trouble. I have one of my old middle school teachers here today, Mr. Cook. Your first name's Jeremiah, but I can't say Jeremiah. It's Mr. Cook.
That's all right.
How you doing?
You're doing just fine. It's great. Good to see you. And Jeremiah's okay now. We're past middle school.
Did yeah, it's been a couple years. Whenever you were at Temple, I don't remember the years if you guys crossed each other, but do you remember Sarah Johnson? She was a volleyball coach there for a little bit at Temple.
Okay.
And before she married Matt Johnson.
Oh yes, that's Sarah. Yes,
Yeah.
We're very good friends.
Yeah.
That's Sarah.
Yes. So
yeah,
whenever
yeah, you're talking about Matt and Sarah. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was one of my favorite teachers there, and me and my wife saw her not too long ago in Hobby Lobby. And whenever I introduced her to my wife, I said, "This is Miss Johnson," and she's like, "You can call me Sarah," and I'm like, "Miss Johnson."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's a tough transition. Yeah, Matt and Sarah, they're awesome. Yeah,
they're really good people. So I want to get into your ministry work, everything you're doing in Ukraine and stuff like that. But before we do that, I do something on here called the Big Three. And so this is just kind of a little warm up. It's just 3 random questions to get the ball rolling. So you ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So question number 1, what supervillain would you stand the best chance against in a fight?
Supervillain.
Yeah.
The first thing that pops in mind would be Loki, I guess. Did I get his name right?
Yeah, I'm not a huge Marvel guy. The only one I know is like Lex Luthor.
Right.
You know, that's I like Superman, Smallville, stuff like that. But you say Loki, is he one of the weaker villains?
He's extremely prideful, so I feel like it'd be easy to kind of outwit.
Yeah, there you go.
There his weakness.
All right. So question number 2, if you could only choose one dessert for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Cheesecake. Yeah.
There you go. I love it. Yeah, that's me too. For my birthday, I'd rather have cheesecake than regular birthday cake myself.
Right. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm with you. All right. Question number 3. So this one, I heard this one on another podcast. So hopefully I can word it right. So basically it's, if you could have $10 million, but a snail is chasing you at all times, and if it touches you, you die, would you take the money?
Probably. I'd use it to buy a fast car.
Yeah. It knows where you are. I think they said it knows where you are at all times.
Yeah.
And it's constantly chasing you. And I think they said that a snail moves like 0.03 miles an hour or something like that.
So eventually it's going to catch up on you.
Eventually, yeah, it might take a little while, but I would try to surround my house with salt.
Yeah, there you go.
Just pour a bunch of salt around the perimeter, maybe take some of that money and get people to watch out for you. Yeah. All right. So that's the big 3, just a little warm up. So if you don't care, before we get into the ministry stuff, to like kind of share a little bit of your testimony, how you came to Christ and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I came to Christ when I was 8 years old. My parents had taken me to Awana quite a bit on Wednesday nights at church. So I knew the plan of salvation, but I had never accepted Christ. And I remember I went to a new school, and my teacher brought me up in front of everybody and said, "This is Jeremiah Cook, our new student. And are you a Christian, Jeremiah?" And I knew that I wasn't, but I lied. I said, "Yeah, I am." That night when I tried to sleep, all I could think about was, I know I'm a sinner. I know that I've never repented of my sins. I've never actually decided to follow Christ. And that just kept bugging me. I think it was 2 nights later, I prayed to accept Christ. And that's how I became a Christian. When I was in 9th grade, I felt God calling me to ministry. Yeah. So that really led to my decision to go to a Christian college, which was Tennessee Temple. And then one thing just snowballed after that. When I came to Temple, got the job to teach and have you as a student, and then stayed at Temple for a little bit, and ended up joining the police department to serve in that capacity. And I've been at the police department for about 12 years.
I don't know what the statute of limitations is on some of this stuff. I'm just going to ask you, see if you remember this. Okay. So, cause I know whenever you first became a police officer, I don't know if you still do, cause I haven't been there in years, but you used to work Riverbend a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So, for those of you that are not from the Chattanooga area, Riverbend is just like a music festival every summer. They bring a bunch of washed up bands to the Chattanooga area, and they have a festival downtown. And so, we went one year. It was me, and there was 6 or 7 of us. And you remember?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
was brothers.
Mm-hmm.
But there was probably, like I said, 6 or 7 of us, and we had like 2 or 3 pins. You had to have a pin to get in.
Mm-hmm.
And so was taking the pins, 2 or 3 pins. This is allegedly reportedly, you know what I'm saying? This is
Right.
alleged. Yeah, a couple of us would walk in, and then she would take the pins and then walk out and then bring the next person in.
Mm-hmm.
And you called her. I don't know if you remember this or not. You called her because you said, I remember we were standing there watching because I saw you looking at her a couple times as she kept going in and out, in and out. And then you walked up to her and you said, I hope you're not doing what I think you're doing. She was like, what? Whatever do you mean, Mr. Cook? Yeah. So,
I've forgotten about that. Now, I remember seeing that happening, but I forgot that. That's funny.
Yeah. And then there was one other time too, and I don't know if you remember this, and I was telling my wife about it because I don't remember. It was either with I don't know if you remember either of those characters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one night that it was either me or that other person. We were hanging out, and I was taking them back to their car, and you were sitting in your patrol car across the parking lot. Okay. And we were sitting there talking, and we looked over, and I said, I think that's Mr. Cook over there. And we were just kind of looking at you, and you looked back over there at us, and you didn't recognize us. And so you pulled over there, and you're like, we have a problem over here? And I rolled down the window. I was like, hey, Mr. Cook, it's us. And you're like, oh, hey, guys.
That's
so I didn't know if we were going to get arrested or what the deal was that night.
Right. How good your grades were, right?
Okay, yeah, we might be in some trouble there. But so I want to ask, too, like, how has it been the last couple of years, especially since, like, 2020 and stuff, just like the vibe, being a police officer, that kind of, the stuff you're having to go through there.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely, there were a lot of protests during 2020. Fortunately in Chattanooga, it didn't get as bad as other cities. But for me, the biggest takeaway was there's always going to be good and evil. There's always going to be a need to do what's right, regardless of whether you're understood or misunderstood. There's always, it's always the right thing to do the right thing. We had a lot of things went wrong with other departments and stuff like that. And, there's good cops, and then there's cops that, there's a very small few that need to be weeded out. And the system is doing that. So a big takeaway for me was I'm so thankful to be in a position where I can stand up for what's right, and call out wrong and stand between law-abiding citizens and people that, that push for anarchy and stuff like that. So I'm really thankful for, especially over the last 3 years, God's really reminded me that I'm really blessed to be in the position I'm in. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity to, kind of stand in the gap when it's needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say too, thank you for everything that you're doing, putting your life on the line like that, literally, because not a lot of people do that. It's a very selfless thing to do. You know what I'm saying? To stand in that gap. And so, thank you for that, because that's the one thing that's driven me crazy too over the last couple of years, how the people that are wanting to bash the police officers and talk bad about them and things like that are the same ones that something goes sideways, they're screaming for them, I need help. And so it's just, I just can't imagine the position and the stress that was going on over those few years. But I mean, even still now, did people start treating you different that you had known beforehand?
I don't think I've noticed too much of that. There's a section of society that goes out of their way to say, hey, we really appreciate what you're doing as a law enforcement officer. And those people actually kind of came out of the woodwork a little bit more. Matter of fact, during the height of some of the protests, some people would walk up to me and they would look around to see if anybody was watching. If no one was watching, they'd say, hey, I really appreciate the job you're doing.
Wow.
And that means a lot. And it's just a good reminder that, in every society, you've got good and evil. And if you don't have people that stand up, and it doesn't have to be just police officers, if you don't have law-abiding citizens that stand up and say, no, we're going to be a society of law and order, that society will devolve into chaos. And we see examples like that all over the world.
That's crazy. So I want to get into what is Rescue 82, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So did you start this ministry?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
A documentary that I watched called The Free Burma Rangers, and I highly recommend it. It's about David Eubank and his ministry in Burma for the past 20 years. I watched that documentary and it just floored me. I
Yeah.
mean, I was blown away by it. They basically do frontline relief work in conflict areas. And I emailed him and wanted to potentially go on a missions trip with them. But it was during the height of COVID, and it was, flights were almost impossible to find. And
Right.
then about a year after that, while I was trying to get a team together to go over to Burma, the Ukraine war broke out. So we said, hey, let's go to Ukraine instead. It's a conflict, and we could do frontline humanitarian work. And we said we probably need a name. We're going to be 6 or 7 military age guys rolling around the country, 30 days after Russia invaded. It's going to look kind of odd if we don't have, an official name. So God just laid on my heart. Psalm 82, verses 3 and 4 talks about rescuing the weak and the needy, delivering them from the hand of the wicked. So God just gave me the name Rescue 82. And we went on our first trip, and the ball just started rolling after that.
I love it. I love it. Had you been on missions before, like mission trips before that?
A few. We've been on my family's been on 4 trips to Brazil to train some police officers and do some ministry work with friends from Tennessee Temple, David and Sarah Carroll. And then I've been on one in high school to Jamaica. It's kind of a typical high school, missions trip. But it was kind of a combination of, you've got, law enforcement officers and military veterans that have been in high stress, life-threatening situations. And our group basically said, we want to go to where people are suffering. And it's a place where a lot of people would say it's too dangerous to go to. And we didn't feel it was too dangerous for us. Plus, the way we look at it is, people are people. Would I help my neighbor if his house is on fire across the street? Should it matter that it's across the ocean to help somebody? And that's really what's been on my heart over the last year and a half, is the distance and the circumstances shouldn't have an impact on whether or not I go. It should be, is there someone there that needs help? That should really be the main question.
Yeah. Are you guys affiliated with any church over there or anything? Or are y'all just going in and just doing whatever you can do while you're there?
Yeah. So we, when we first started back in March of 22, we made contact with a friend that went to Tennessee Temple Seminary. He's in Romania, and he knew a pastor in Ukraine. So he got us connected with that pastor. And so we've done 4 trips total, and we've worked with that church that he pastors in Ukraine on all 4 trips. And I got to tell you, these people are amazing. They are constantly working every week to help people that are suffering, even though a lot of them have lost their jobs, even though there's air raid sirens, there's bombs going off in their city. They're making trips across the whole country to help their fellow countrymen with supplies, food, diapers, you name it. There's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So like before the Lord laid it on your heart to do this, did you ever like imagine or picture yourself doing something like this?
Not really. I guess not. So I'd always wished I had. So one of my biggest regrets, I've never served in the military. And that was one of the reasons I went into the police department. Was it's not the same thing, but it's a similar type service. And so I've always felt like there was something, I was missing something. There was something that I wasn't doing. And when when the war broke out in Ukraine, the movie, the documentary about the Free Burma Rangers, that all collided with me. And I couldn't even hardly get the prayer out to say, Lord, is this what you want me to do? Before I could tell Lord, God was saying, yes. Like you don't, do you really, it's like God responded, do you have to ask? Like, yes, this is the things are coming together like this on purpose. So it's been awesome. I can't even tell you how excited I am to about the what we've been able to do and what God may have in store for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many trips have you said that you guys have made so far?
Made four total. Got
That's
one
awesome.
planned for October, back to Ukraine. We've got one trip planned. We're not just doing Ukraine. We're actually, we've got a trip planned in September to work with an organization called Tactica. And they teach police officers in South America and Latin America tactics, but they do it from a completely Christian perspective, where they're doing Bible studies in the evenings and they're teaching them law enforcement skills during the day. And I was like, I got to get involved with that. That's an awesome idea. And then, we may be able to potentially pair some of our resources, long term, kind of the same pool of people, so to speak.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that's I'm seeing a lot more of now is people doing things outside of the church, because since 2022, since 2022, I didn't mean 2022, when a bunch of churches are getting shut down and you're forced to stay in the house and things like that, a lot of people didn't return back to church. Right. And so the ones that did return back to church, it's like, okay, we have to find a way to reach these people that were just kind of dipping their toes in the water to begin with. And that's one thing that, I have 4 kids now myself. And so I've been able to help coach my son's basketball team. And it's cool because it's a Christian league that he plays for. And they put a big, exclamation mark, a big highlight on the fact that we're here to teach these kids about the word too. It's not just here to play basketball. Right. And, so it's been cool because of it, you're given the opportunity to use the gifts that God has given you for him, so it's like things that you never would have imagined that you would do, like you said, going overseas and doing these things, but God's using the talents that you were already given to go across seas and do, what I'm saying? What he has given to you. And, something that really resonated to me, but when you spoke a second ago about how everything just kind of collided and it was just like, okay, this is an obvious, yes, this is from God, because that was and I don't remember if I've shared this on here before, but whenever, I felt like God was calling me to do more. We went into our church. It was a Sunday morning. It was actually, March 20th of last year. And, or was it the year before? Either way, they hadn't been doing the altar calls for 2.5 years or something like that. And I told my wife leading up to that week to that church service, I was like, I really feel like God's calling me to do more for him, but I don't know what it is. And I'm just praying and asking God, what do you want me to do? And I was feeling like a tug to do ministry work. And so I was praying about it, and we went to church. And at the end of the service, my pastor said, I know we haven't done this in a couple of years, but I'm feeling like we need to do an altar call today. So I looked over at my wife and I'm like, I guess I'm going down there, And so, I went down there and I got to talk to my pastor and everything like that. And it's just crazy the way, it's not crazy, but it's awesome how the way that the Lord just brings opportunities like that to your life. And you're like, this is unmistakably from God. So I've got to go with this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. And it's so cool because it's not hard for him to do that. It blows us away, but it's just, he connects those things like that. And it's so cool to see God work like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It really excites me when you see throughout scripture, and I never even noticed it until recently, because, whenever I read my word now, I'm always praying Lord, reveal something to me through the reading of your word. Don't let me just get into the routine of, I have to read my Bible and I got to pray and this and that. And over again throughout scripture, where it just time and time again says, before the foundations of the earth were laid. And so when I think about that stuff, I'm like, okay, it gives me more of a confidence in what I'm doing, because I'm like, this was already part of the plan. God already had a plan for my life. It's just up to me to make sure I'm putting him first and then just walking in it. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's like you said, it's kind of, I had a guy on a while back who said the things that God was doing in his life, it was shocking, but it's not. And I'm like, yeah, it really is how it is. Cause you're like, how did it even get to this point? But then you're like, okay, because this happened and it led to this, and then God opened this door. And
Yep.
so, yeah, it's exciting. So where can, I'm sure you guys like take donations and stuff like that. Where can people go to help out what you guys are doing?
Yeah. So our website's the best place. It's rescue82.org, rescue the number 82.org. And then there's a learn more tab. There's, who we are. We're a 501c3. So all the donations are tax deductible. And then there's a secure giving link on the website as well that people can give securely. And there's also other instructions, other ways to give as well. So, I love how you talked about how, God's working those things together like that. And I forgot to mention when the war in Ukraine broke out, I felt an urge to go, and I called some people and tried to find out, who do we know over there? And I was getting dead ends for like 24, 48 hours. And then I realized I haven't even prayed about this. So I said a simple prayer, God, if you want me to go to Ukraine, let my phone ring. And 24 hours later, I had a text message that said, will you go to Ukraine with me, from one of my coworkers? And I just held my phone and stared at it. And I thought, that's exactly what I prayed for. There it is. And so I replied, yeah, when are we going? And so that was two of us. And by the time we left 2 weeks later, and we had a 7-man team to go on that first trip. So the Lord was working behind the scenes and was already stirring other people's hearts. I just didn't know it. And he worked it all together.
Yeah. That's the thing about God that just, it blows me away, because how, like, not just your yes to him, but the people around you's yes as well, like, affects so much. And so, like, that's one thing that I really try to push on here, just that fact that, like, just that saying yes to God affects more than just you. I don't think my mom will mind me share this story, but my mom, her mom was, while she was raising her, she was a prostitute. And so my mom grew up with that, her whole upbringing. Right. And I was talking to her about that the other day, because her sister went the other direction. But my mom, she accepted Christ into her heart when she was 14 or 15 years old. And I told my mom, because we were talking about that the other day, I'm like, your yes to God, like accepting him into your heart at 14, affected so many people. Because my mom, she's had 4 kids. I have 4 kids. My sister has getting ready to have her 4th kid. My brother has 2 kids. And I'm like, if you would have decided just to go in that direction and not accept Christ, like, who knows? I might not even be here right now. My brothers and sisters might not even be here right now. So just thinking about that, like, every decision in our life is so important. And Satan, like John 10:10, has been coming up around me a lot lately. And just, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Mm-hmm.
Satan wants to steal every little moment from us, because, that one moment that you could just be throwing away could be something that makes an impact on so many people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. God's always working, even when we don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one thing, how you said how you got a text message. It was funny, because whenever I started this, and I don't mean to just be talking about me the whole time. People that have been listening to this for a while, they might have heard this story, but our stories are kind of similar in that way, to where whenever I felt like God was calling me to do this podcasting, I never made like videos, or I never got behind a microphone or anything like that. And even on my regular, like my personal Instagram, anytime that I was in a picture, it was just because, like, if I was with my wife, or if I was with my kids, I never like made a video or anything like that. And so when I felt like God was calling me to do it, I was like, no, that's not for me. I'm not doing that, And I drive a truck. And so I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was listening to a podcast by a professor from Lipscomb University. His name's Rob Touchstone. And he was talking about Anchor, and that's the platform that I use to make my podcast. And I was listening to it, and every time he would say, you can create a podcast too, I felt God was like, that's what you need to do, And so to make a long story short, I was like, I'm not doing that. And my sister texted me one day and she's like, and I hadn't even said anything to my wife. Like, I feel like God's calling me to do this. Didn't say anything to anybody. My sister texted me out of the blue and she's like, I feel like you should start a podcast. And I was like, where did that come from? You know? And so I still have the message in my phone. I'll never delete it because it was just like such a, like a abundantly clear word from God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it was just, I love moments like that. Everything that God is doing in and around our lives, like we have to like speak that out to people because they need to see like God is working all around us. All it takes is just you giving him that yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, perfect timing with that text message to you. It was yeah, where did that come? You probably hadn't even talked about that.
No, I don't know. She, whenever I asked her, I'm like, why did you even say that? And she's like, I just feel like you would be good at it. And I'm like, I don't make videos. I don't do anything like that. I had started a men's Bible study around that time. But I was just feeling like God was calling me to do more, you know? And, it's led to this, and the doors that God has opened. Just, I never, would have imagined, a year ago that I'd be doing this right now, but, it's just something that I'm just very thankful for and honored that he's given me the opportunity to do it. And so I just feel like how Paul says, like, necessity is laid upon me, woe to me if I'm not preaching the gospel. So it's like any opportunity that the Lord's going to give me to speak on what he's done in my life or speak on his name, that's what the goal is,
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So what's, I'm sure you guys have probably had some wild things happen over there. You share maybe a crazy story that happened over there?
Yeah. Let me pick one or two. So we, on our second trip, we met another pastor, and he was connected with some military units as a chaplain. So we were able to visit those military locations with him, and it was in a village that there were no civilians right now. It's basically like a neighborhood here in the States, just a very typical suburban neighborhood. But there's no civilians there. It's only soldiers because that area had been occupied by Russia. But when we were there, Ukraine had taken it back. So we pulled up. We're going to give them some first aid kits, talk to them, listen to their stories. Our plan was to try to share the gospel if we could. And when we pulled up, they said, hey, you guys can't park here on the street. Like, follow us. We got to show you where to park we had two vans. They said, we need to show you where to park the vans, because if you don't move these vans, they could get hit by an airstrike. So we were a little close, we were pretty close. So we walked down the street with one of the soldiers, and he was going to show us where to park the vans, and we could hear the whistling sound of artillery flying over us. So I stopped and listened, and then it passed on. And I remember my buddy that was walking in front of me, he stopped, he turned around, he said, "Did you hear that?" And I thought, of course I heard that. I mean, it flew right over top of us. Of course I heard it. It was obvious. And the soldiers, he stopped for a second, but he could tell a lot better than we could that once he stopped just for a second, he could tell it's not coming to us. It's flying over our heads. So it was just a really good reminder of what they deal with on a regular basis, hearing, mortar rounds and artillery rounds going off in the distance and then flying over and hitting close for them sometimes. But that same village, we visited that village in October of 22. We went back to that same village in March, and it was full of civilians because Russia had pulled back. They'd pulled back to the Dnipro River, and it was so cool we delivered 4 vans of food to that village in March of this year. And I told them, I got choked up while I was telling them through the translator. I said, I was here in October and it was only soldiers here. Now you guys are here. And they started cheering because I said, you guys have so much bravery and determination to move back. A lot of their homes are destroyed. I mean, the roofs are gone. There's huge holes in the walls. There's, bullet holes all over their houses. They've come back to their homes after being gone for months and months, and they're trying to rebuild. And basic services aren't there. Water, electricity are very intermittent in those villages. So they were just so thankful that we showed up with, like, groceries. And it was one less thing for them to worry about. And we got to share the gospel with them. I got to pray with them. I got to take, pictures. So they'd ask for pictures. But it was just really cool, that situation coming full circle of walking through the village with soldiers in October, artillery rounds flying over, and then coming back in March, and you can't hear any explosions. And it's full of civilians again. So that was a really cool experience.
Yeah. And that's just the main thing that stuck out to me about that was just like how much we take for granted here, like the safety that we have here. Mm-hmm. And I think, not to get too political, but I think a lot of the things that's going on right now in the States is because we've had it too good for too long. And we've become ungrateful, unthankful for the things that we have, creating issues for ourselves. But the way that the man could just tell that, okay, we're safe, it's going to go over. It's like he could tell the difference. That's insane to think about. That's something that hopefully we'll never have to worry about here. You know what I mean? But to be in that position where you could just, okay, I know we're good. We can keep going. That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. I worry sometimes as I'm driving down the road, if my check engine light comes on, it scares me to death. I can't imagine having to go over there and having to deal with something like that. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, their way of life right now. That hit me on the most recent trip we went on was last month. Myself and Bruce Hallen. He's did you ever go to Camp Joy out in Harrison?
I never went. I've been there, but I've never been during the camp season or whatever.
Yeah, he was the director of camp for several years. Around the same time I was teaching at Temple. Okay. So he's a pastor in Kimball, Tennessee now. So he went with me in May, and our first night, like we got to our room, and we hadn't even unpacked yet. And then there were several missiles that hit close enough that it kind of shook the windows. And he came to my door and was like, "Hey, did you hear that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I heard." Let me back up. He came to my door and he said, "Hey, I hear the air raid sirens, and I thought I heard some explosions." And I said, "Okay, I'll be out in a second." And then one of them was really close. And so, relatively close. And so he opened my door. He goes, "Well, you heard that one, right?" I said, "Yeah, I definitely heard that one. It rattled the windows and everything." So the next day we were telling our Ukrainian friends that from the church, we said, "Hey, there was a couple of missiles hit, relatively close." And he just simply responded. He said, "This is good for you." He said, "This is good for you to see what we live with on a daily basis." And he was right. It was a great reminder that every day they've got air raid sirens, they've got explosions. 2 different times on our trips, we were in various cities. We heard explosions and found out later those explosions had killed civilians. And it's just heartbreaking to think that, in one of the situations was at a grocery store, and they were literally just getting groceries when, an airstrike goes off course and it kills the people in the parking lot. So it's heartbreaking what they live with on a daily basis. But it's encouraging to see how the Christian churches there have really stepped up and said, we're going to serve, and we're going to be the hands and feet of Jesus in this crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. And just doing something as simple as, like you said, providing groceries or things like that, just give them something one thing that they're not gonna have to worry about, because that door, it's going to be a lot. I feel like, I've never done any mission work or anything like that, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like people are going to be more receptive to what you have to say if you're coming there and you're kind of, okay, how can I help your need? And then, after kind of build a little bit of a rapport, then it's like, okay, let me talk to you about while I'm really here, instead of just going in heavy handed and trying to bash them over the head. That's one thing that I feel like Jesus did such a good job of, is just like, he wasn't bashing people over the head. He wasn't, talking down to people. He was like meeting them where they were at, like helping their needs, like the blind people coming up to him. He was giving them their sight back. He was, allowing people to walk again. And so, just helping people where they're at. And then it's just like, okay, who is this guy? I want to find out more about this guy, so
Yeah.
I just love everything you guys are doing. I'm definitely going to be praying for y'all. That's a scary thing. So you said you're going to be going back in October.
Yeah, we have a team. We're putting a team together for October. That's our next trip that we have planned, and then we're trying to expand into Burma, hopefully to link up with the Free Burma Rangers in January. There's been a civil war going on for decades in Burma, and they've been there for over 20 years. So I'd love to work with them. I feel like they are. I'm just blown away by the work that David Eubanks doing, and I'd love to just rub shoulders with them for a few weeks, help it in any way we can, and learn, really just learn from them. So Ukraine in October, and then January in Burma.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, definitely going to be praying for you. Anybody out there, say a prayer for Mr. Cook. I'm not going to say Jeremiah, Mr. Cook, and Project 82, all those guys. It's you hear about this stuff on TV and you hear about this stuff in the news, but it's a lot more real when you have somebody that's actually been there and going through it and walking the streets with these people and helping them out. So I thank you for coming on today and sharing a little bit of what's going on over there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Donovan. It's awesome. I've been following you on Facebook. It's awesome to see how you're serving the Lord, and I love the title of your podcast. That's what my heart is. We're called to act, and it's really wrong not to. So I'm so proud of you, and I'll be praying for you. I mean, I'm really encouraged by your heart.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. So yeah, y'all go Project 82. Check them out if you can donate. If you can't, then pray. The most important thing that we can be doing is praying. But if you can and you feel led to give, go ahead and do that as well. And I'll put all that in the show notes and in the description. And y'all can just click the links and go check it out. So Mr. Cook, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Come on.